At this stage of our currency converter chat app development journey, we have successfully built our xe/ command so we can generate our currency conversion. However, it's going to be pretty challenging for users to remember hundreds of three-letter currency codes. So in this tutorial, we are going to build an xe-list/ command, and that's going to give us a list of all the currency codes we need. Now, this list is not just a simple message, it's something different. It's a card. And with the chat app API, we can actually generate cards and dialogues for our chat app. One of the benefits of these cards are that they can be interactive, but they also can be styled much more attractively than what you can get with just a standard message here. As you can see at the top here, we've got a header, and that header contains an image indicating the world. So I thought that was a pretty good idea considering we've got the whole world's currencies. And then a main header, and then a subheader here. Then we've got a section. Then each section in the card is separated by the lead letter of the three-letter code. So A, B, C, and so on, all the way through to the end. So that's what we're going to build in this tutorial. Strap in, get your script up and running from the previous tutorial. And if you haven't built that tutorial yet, head back to the previous one and you'll find a link just above now. You can also go to the written tutorial with the segments of code that we have built along the way to get to this stage. Once you're ready to go, join me and we'll get started. So the first thing we need to do is create a new / command. And we're going to do that first by heading over to the code.js file that we have generated and our onMessage trigger function here. Now, in our onMessage trigger function, we have a number of cases that we have assigned to our / command. So we're going to build another case here. So let's just put a semicolon in and make our third case. So we're going to make this case number 3. We're going to return this time an entire function. And we're going to call that function createLetterCardResponse. Now, it's been a while since we've been over to the GCP and updated the configuration for the chat app API. We need to do that next. Now, before we do that, let's just put in some handy notation so we know what this case 3 is all about. So we'll xe-list, just so if we're looking at the code again, we'll remember what's happening. Okay, so let's go head over there. So over to project settings and save yes, of course. And let's scroll down and let's click on the project number, and that'll get us to our GCP account for that project. Goodo, and let's head to apps and services and click on that. From here, we'll scroll down until we get to our Google Chat API. And let's select configuration. And now we'll scroll down until we get to our / command list. And let's click on add a new / command. And this one is going to be xe.list for the name with the / at the start, so the / at the start. And the command ID is going to be 3. So if you remember back to our case, we've used case 3 as the command. So inside message./ command, it should report as 3, and then we want to run this function. So we'll make that 3. And then our description. So let's be fairly concise, and we'll call that list of all currency conversion codes. Okay, we're not using a dialog, we're just using a card here. So now we select done. Now just keep in mind, if you select done, it hasn't saved. I've made this mistake before a couple of times and wondering why things aren't working. So once you select done, then go down and select save. Now we can test if this xe-list command has been entered by heading to our chat, and we'll go to our project that we're working on. Now if we /, we'll see in our / repository for currency converter the xe-list / command. Cool. If we do anything with it, it'll come back with an error because we haven't built the function yet. All right, let's build that function. Okay, so it's not a / command per se, it's a standalone card. So let's put this in a separate file to make things easier. Make another Google script file, and we'll call this currency card list. And the function is going to be, of course, this function here. It's not going to take any inputs or the text message because we don't need one. It's just going to generate our list. So let's update that function name. Input our brackets in. All right, so what we need to do here to create our card is return a JSON response. And that is to respond back to the chat API so it knows how to build the card appropriately. Fortunately, like all good Google APIs, there is great documentation with it. So let's head over to the cards tool here. Now, accessing the cards is a little bit unusual or counterintuitive, or at least it was for me. So when we go into the docs and references for the chat API, you need to go into the space messages and then select overview and then card v2. Now, at the time of writing this, some of the versions for Google Apps Script are using the depreciated v1, but I'm trying to keep it as up to date as possible, so we'll be working with the v2 version for this tutorial. So let's scroll down a bit and we can see an example of how the card will lay out. And this example is then represented in this JSON object here. So what we'll do first, and I'm replicating a sample code in the documentations, is just create the outer part of this object first. So let's go back to our code now. And what we want to do is return, and we're going to return our object here, or a JSON object, and that's going to be cards v2. If we have a look at our sample, we've got cards v2 here. You can see the layout for this v2 portion here is a little bit different. That's fine. This is what I found in other documentation for Google Apps Script. So cards v2 colon. So we'll create a list now, and inside that list is an object. So we'll have a look back at our notes. So we've got a list here, and inside that list is an object. All right, let's put that on a new line. And the first thing we need to add is this card ID here. Okay, so we need to add in card ID. And that's going to be equal to whatever the ID you want to create. Let's just call it currency list. I presume it needs to be fairly unique when we're using cards on a project. So if you have another card, probably a good idea to call it something else. Okay, so the next thing we need here is the card itself. And that card is going to contain an object. And that object is going to contain a header portion and then a list of sections that we want to display inside the card. So instead of putting it all in one big confusing object, and we also have to do some transformation and stuff like that, we're going to just set some variables here. So our card will contain a variable called header, and it will also contain a variable called sections, which we will build out in a moment. Cool, so that's the basic outer structure that we want to design here. Let's put a little colon to show we've finished that. We'll put a space in here to indicate as well. Okay, so the next thing we need to build is our header. And our header we want to look like, let's go back. A header we want to look like this section here, where we've got an image of the globe and then a list of all available currencies and then a subheader as well. Let's head back. And so this will be our header section. And let's create a constant variable called header. And that's going to be equal to another object. So we have a look back here, we can see our header is an object containing a number of properties. Now, some properties are required, others aren't. Okay, so let's just go back and let's add in a title. And we want that title to be list of all available currencies. Okay, and our next property is going to be the subtitle. And that will read in order of currency code. And then we want an image URL. And that image URL you can find in Unsplash if you search for globe, or you can find it in the written tutorial for this portion of the course in the description below. I'm just going to copy it now and paste it in. Alternatively, you can throw in your own image. So we can also add in the image type. So if we look back here, the image type, and if we add circle, that's going to provide us with this nice little circle here. So let's do that. So let's grab the image type. Oh, and that's going to be equal to uppercase circle here. And there's, I think there's another square type as well. It is case sensitive though, I do believe. For people who are using the audio reader, it's probably a good idea to have an alt text in. So let's go ahead and do that. So this image alt text, just copy that and whack that in there. And we'll just say avatar of the globe. Cool. This is probably a good time for us to run a test. We should be able to run a test just on the header here. We will get an error if we don't comment out this section. So I'm just going to comment that out for now and just hit deploy and manage deployments. And we will call this, we'll grab a new version and we'll just say currency card list header test and deploy. And that's done. Let's head over to our currency converter and run our xe/ command for list and hit enter, and hopefully it will just show the header for now. Yes, nice. So we've got our image in place, we've got list of all available currencies in order of currency code. Perfect. Now to the tricky part. We need to build out our list of sections. So let's just go back to the sample we've got here. Our goal here is to grab our list of currency codes in our currency globals GS file, iterate through them, and check the letter. If all the currency codes share the same starting letter, we want to put them in the same section in the card with the starting letter as a title. So what do I mean? Let's go back here. So you can see here, A, we've got category A, just like an index or just like an address book index, if you will. So we've got A at the top here, and every 3-letter code starting with A. B, every 3-letter code starting with B. Now, why didn't I just put this in one big list? Well, I could tell you the lie first, which was it just makes it look really nice separating them by the starting letter. But the fact was, when I was testing this out, we reached a max text limit when I was testing this out, and I couldn't put all of this text in one big card without it failing. So I went for another approach and decided to separate it into separate sections. And it seems that I could put all the text in each one of these sections separately without any failure there. And to be honest, it looks a lot better now. Okay, so let's head back and head to our currency card list, GS. Let's work on our sections now. And in that sections, we need to store the section. And we will creatively make a let variable, let sections equal an array. And that's going to store an array of all our section objects. So if we go back here to our documentation, you can see sections are built as an array, and inside each array are a set of objects. So this was the header contact info, which was this one here. And then they had some decorated text like person, and that was an icon for a person here. So this online set of information there. And then they had some more decorated text for phone, and they had a button list down below here, all separated into their own portion inside that particular section. All right, so we're going to build our own. What we need to do is iterate through this currency code object. So let's just build that quickly first. So we'll use a we'll say variable currency, CUR for short, for currency, in currency codes. Do that. And then we need to store some specific information. So let's go up the top here and create a bunch of working variables for this. So we'll say working variables. And we'll call this first one letter. And that's going to be equal to A. So we reference that A when we're looking for all items that match A in our globals here. And then we'll say if it doesn't match an A, we're going to create a new section change that letter variable to equal B. And then we need to generate a string under each letter section containing this range of information. So this one needs to be converted into an entire string with a new line for each currency code and its full name. We'll make another let variable and we'll call that one list by letter. And that's going to start off as an empty string that will fill out in our loop below. Then we need a counter and we want that equal to 1. And we also want the size of the object. So we'll say const. This counter will need to be updated for each iteration. We're using the counter essentially to cross-check the counter against the total size of the currency code's object. Once it reaches the total currency size, we need to deploy the last letter in the alphabet. It's assigned list by letters. So let's create a size variable, and that's going to be equal to object.keys currency codes, and then that's going to make an array of keys, and then we can just get the length of that array. Cool. So our iterator is all set up to work properly now. Let's sort of do things in reverse order. So let's create the condition where the first letter in the 3-letter code has changed. And that's basically if the first letter of the key does not match the current letter, and that's this one here, we want to create a new section. Alternatively, or if we are the last item in the object, then we also want this portion to run because it's going to be Z. We'll grab the Z, or for my American friends, Z, and add the section header and the list by letter items. Cool, so we've got some descriptions there. That'll help our future selves out. And let's get cracking. So we want if, so our variable cur, and we want the 0th item in the string. So what does that mean? So the cur is going to display all the property keys, right? So let's go back to our globals. So this is going to be cur, and then the next iteration, this is going to be cur. Next iteration, this will be cur. So if we go cur brackets or square brackets 0, that's going to be A, all the way down. So if cur 0 is not equal to letter, so our current letter is A, so we're saying if cur 0 is not equal to A, so let's go back to our globals. So if cur 0 is not equal to A, so this will be the first occurrence of that. So that'll trigger when we get to here. Or if our size is equal to our counter. So our counter has maxed out. So our counter has got to the end of the object. So if the size matches, then it needs to collect this list by letter, mark it as Z, and create that final section that we have here. If we don't have that, then we won't have our Z section. All right, so what do we need to do in here first? So the first thing we need to do is create our widget. So we need to go const widget is equal to, and why do I say we need to create our widget? If you have a look down in our sections here in the documentation, we can see our list of widgets for a section. So that widget is going to contain for us decorated text, which is probably going to be our letter as our top label. Then inside that decorated text, we're going to have some text, and that's going to be our string of each 3-letter code for that letter and its description. So widget, and that widget is going to be an object, and that object is going to have decorated text here. We'll just acquire this one. And the decorated text property is an object. And then we need a top label. And that top label is going to be equal to our letter, our current letter. And then we also need our text. And the text is going to be equal to our list by letter here, our current generated one. So on the first set of iterations until we hit B, so it's the first time this will trigger, B will trigger, then we're going to get the letter, which is going to be A, and then the list by letters, which is going to be all the 3-letter codes starting with A. That we haven't generated yet, but we will in a moment. And then let's make sure we wrap the text as well. So we'll say wrap text, and we'll set that Boolean to true. So once the widget is built for this if statement, then we need to push it to our sections array here. So sections dot push. We can put in multiple widgets, and it's actually, I believe it's asked for widgets plural. Yeah, so we need this item here. So we need to push an object containing widgets, colon, an array of widgets, widget. Cool. So let's go back. We've got widgets. Widgets contains an array, and each array of widgets has a widget type. So this one's decorated text. There's other different type button lists, for example. So we want to push that one into the section. So we have one widget inside one section for this. All right, so we've got that now. So that widget's been built. So now we need to do some updates. First thing we need to update is our letter. So the letter now needs to be the current key in the string. Is we want to grab that. So that's going to be 0 there. So remember, on that first time this is triggered, we go back to our globals, that's going to be CUR0 is going to be this B here. Second time it's triggered will be down in this C here, and that CUR0 will be C, and so on. And then we want to clear our list by letter. So we want that now equal to an empty string. And let's just make some notes. We'll call this one set new letter and refresh the list by letter, just to help out our future selves. Oh, and I did something weird up here. I did a colon like I was making an object. Should have been equal. That's better, huh? Good job. Okay, so that if statement's made now. We need to make a condition that occurs every time we iterate through this object now, though. And that's basically us building this list by letter. So let's go list by letter. And we want to add, so we'll use plus equals to. And we'll use our backticks. And the first thing we need to add is our property key. Let's add in 2 spaces here and put in a pipe. I think that's makes it quite attractive. And then we'll add 2 more spaces in here, and then we will add the values for that property. So that's going to be our currency codes, and then our property ID there. And then we need to create a new line. After that, let's see, that job's done. And then lastly, we need to update our counter. Cool. So when we run our first iteration of this object, it'll go and have a look and see if the letter matches the currency code. If it does, it's going to ignore this section here and then go straight down to this list by letter. It's going to create a string that adds in the currency code key, puts in a pipe and a space, and then adds in the values, which is the name of the currency code. And then it'll update the counter. We can unhide this, hit save, and let's just give it a test to see if everything's working. So let's go to deploy, manage deployment, edit, new version. Hopefully by the time this comes out, your testing mode should have a head deployment testing, and we won't have to keep going through and managing and creating a new deployment each time. Currency code card. There we go. Hit deploy and select done. Let's go back to our chat app and to our current project. And if we haven't made any mistakes, this should run nicely. Look at that. Okay, so we've got a header here, nice little world map to show that we've got currency codes from around the world. Then we've got our list of currency codes with A, B, C, all the way through the alphabet for all the currency codes. If there's an alphabet letter missing in our currency codes, it's not going to appear, which is what we want. We don't want to waste space. And now a user can select one of these, hit Control-C to copy it, and they can go XE, say 10 of these monies in these monies, and hit enter and see what pops up. There we go. Okay, we're pretty much done. We've got one small task to go. Let's go back to our currency globals here. And we haven't added in our XE list to the error instructions because that's going to be extremely helpful, isn't it? So let's go ahead and do that. We'll head down just below this and we'll add in, you can get a list of all currencies with the, and we'll put it in bold, xe-list/command. Cool, hit save there. And let's deploy that one last time. Yeah, it's fine. And hit done. And guess what? You're done. We have finished the Currency Converter Chat App course. If you've made it this far, fantastic. It's been a long trip and there's been a lot involved in it. So let's just review what we've built so far. So we've got our 3 now XE/commands, and we've got our newly updated XE help command, and that now has our XE list. So if a user for the first time or they want to find a new currency code, they can type in our XE-list and get our currency code list and scroll through and select whatever they want. And they can also build an XE command. And get their currency conversion. Now also keep in mind that we can add this to our Google Space, and anyone in the same organization as you can run these slash commands inside that space. If you've got clients from a different organization in the space, they can't run it, which is probably a good thing, but you can also use a currency converter quickly for them and respond with the currency that you need. Now, this is far from the end of understanding the full scope of what the chat API can do for you. We haven't covered dialogues and we haven't dived into the link previews, and I hope they will be the subject of future tutorials for you. So if you enjoyed the tutorial, hit that like button. And if you want to see more tutorials like this, subscribe and get regular updates by smashing that notification bell. Until next time.